This is Beyond with Heather Tesch, where we examine near-death experiences and life itself, hopefully making this life a little better. Hello everybody, welcome. Thank you so much for joining me today. Well, as you know, near-death experiencers say a lot of fascinating things, and sometimes it's fun to squeeze all of those things together into one episode. And that's exactly what I did.
Heather reared up. She stepped off the sloping hill, flipped over backwards onto me. So I could see, I was holding onto her mane. I could see us going backwards. I knew she was going to fall across my body. And the minute her back hit my chest, I left my body. I was 30, 40 feet up in the air. I saw my body. I saw Heather roll over my body and I was tossed like a rag doll. That's the only way I can describe it. I looked like Raggedy Ann. I knew I was dead and I was okay. I wasn't worried about myself. I was concerned about my horse. I wanted to make sure she was okay. And I saw my sisters. My little sister screamed and covered her face with her hands. My other sister was already in the car and she was staring out the window of the car with a look of horror on her face. And I thought, I wish my sisters didn't have to see me die. That was my one thought at that moment. And as I thought that, I saw a light over my right shoulder. It was a golden light.
And then I'm like, wait a minute. Why am I, who am I? Why am I referring to that body in the bed as she, as her? That's not me, because I'm in pure soul form. I feel great. I feel wonderful to be out of that body. I'm not in pain anymore. I'm not scared. I can feel more of my energy coming back. And I'm like, oh, that's Wendy. That's just Wendy Rose Williams. I mean, yes, the body's very important because it's the housing for my soul for this one lifetime, but it's certainly not, who I am. So again, I look at myself in the bed and I go, she's fine. So just so blasé, because the soul is just, revving to go and wants to go up to the light, because I can see the light.
In the blink of an eye, I was above my body, and then I was confused. I was, okay, this is not computing. How can I be here? How can I be there? So there I was looking at myself and the everything that was in the room that I was holding. I saw everything. If I were an artist, I could draw everything to this, smallest detail, but I can't draw to save my life. But I saw myself, and I remember going down and thinking, okay, so that's me, and that's the, the handcuff and but why am I here? And I'm trying to rationalize all of this. And I looked at my chest and I realized, wait a minute, I'm not breathing. There's no movement in my chest. I was like, oh crap, I'm dead. Could I be dead? Am I dead? And before I could even go into some kind of a panic or try to internalize what was happening, there was this beautiful white, not yellow, white, bright light that appeared to my side.
Because when I came up and out of the body, there was this sound. And it was the most soothing, amazing sound that made me realize, oh, that's what's tethering my soul to that body. The body is just the vehicle. And this is where it's important to anybody who's got body issues or body, y'all, it's just the vehicle. You're not that body, there are times when I place an order for the next body, there's some things I'd like to modify. We all have that, but you're not that body. You're just traveling inside that vehicle. It is a way to make manifest the spirit. It is there to serve the spirit's needs while on earth. It is a perfectly designed meat suit that is fully responsive to its environment. And so what was about to happen to me was, and what really authenticated it for me in that moment was, it was so different than what I had been taught to believe was going to happen to me when I died.
And way, way off in the distance was the spark of a very tiny light. So it was almost like being off in space, and it's so incredibly dark that there's this one little spark of a star, maybe galaxies away. And that's how far it seemed in this vastness of this darkness. And so it caught my attention. Of course it caught my attention. There's nothing else to look at. And as I'm watching it, I realize it's getting closer to me. First it was a tiny little spark, and now it's a little bit bigger, and then bigger yet. And as I'm curious and as I'm watching it, I realize it's getting bigger and bigger and coming towards me. Then I recognized it was like a swirling tunnel. And it was not quite over me at that stage, but I could see as it was coming towards me. And I was still curious because I had realized that there was a lot of depth to that, whatever it was, swirling thing. And it had gray to it. It had light gray to it. It had many different tones of gray, but it also had beautiful sparkling tone of white. And it was almost like shimmering, if one could imagine. If you could just imagine this big tunnels swirling. And the next thing I knew, I was in it.
I instantly felt like a portal or a vortex of air open to my left. And I see Archangel Michael flying down as fast as could be. Literally take my spirit out of the body. And I was flying behind in his energy trail, I call it, through the universe. And then I look over and I see the huge bright light, and Michael takes me into that light.
And he was saying, you two are about to go up, very high up, in a place that's incredibly perfect, beautiful, loving. You will be so blissful there. He said, nothing in your life experience can prepare you for where you're going.
Where I landed into the most amazing, this is where that term, when you hear peace that passes all understanding, this is the spot. This is the homepage for that experience.
My spirit left my body, and it was the most miraculous, beautiful, extraordinary thing possible. I was in the light. I was not my body. I was a sphere of light. There was no resistance or feeling of, I don't have a body, right? It was just this freedom, like taking off a tight shoe, like releasing the restriction of what the body is, releasing the vehicle. And I was overjoyed. I was ready. And it was like I was waiting to take the light train home. And I was in this space of pure light, the brightest and whitest of lights you could even imagine. I call it lightning strike white. And yet I was also light, yet there was these variations that kind of an outline where you could see the light within the light. And then I noticed that there were two light beings, and I didn't know what else to call them. They were not beings that I were familiar with, like loved ones that had passed on or religious entities. These beings morphed in and out of form, and there were two. One on the left morphed into more of a masculine energy and shape, a little taller, a little fuller. The one on the right was a little more feminine, smaller. And they communicated with me telepathically.
You can't define the afterlife love or creator's love in human terms. And the only way that I've ever been able to even express it is awe. It's that moment that just, like me, down to your knees in just love and perfection and harmony. There's just not a word for it.
So I just kind of pressed into this light, like, what is this light? And I could tell that this light wasn't just a brightness, it was love. And I knew that it had like a quality. I could tell that this, like the more I stayed in the light is the more I knew all of what the light was. So I know that this light is love, it's life, it's the substance of all things.
The grace of that white light, it always makes me cry, the love, of that light. And I didn't at that time. And it wasn't until I had noticed a different shift. It was an oddly different shift, but it was enough for me to know something had changed in the, I guess better word to use is energy. I didn't really know what it was, but there was a change. And that energy that had come more from the side, because I was down, more from the side of me, was that white, beautiful light, yes, with many dimensions of light to it. But there was also a slight difference to it in the way of, it was almost like a little bit golden too, and I knew that I was somehow in the presence of something different. Not that I knew what it was, I didn't know, and that is when I had felt that all-encompassing and all-knowing of grace and love and support. It always makes me cry. Sorry.
I'm looking at this light, and it was so magnificent, so radiant, and it was alive. It was palpable. It wasn't just like when you're looking at a light and you're seeing light. It's wonderful. It's a beautiful thing. This was so far above that. It exceeded that idea in any way. It was a living presence, and it was vast. I was looking up, and remember, my eyes, I could see, as far as I wanted to see, but I was looking up and I was looking down. I was looking both sides, and I could not find the end of this light. It was incredible. And when I would look one way, I could look the other way at the same time, and up and down, and stay looking forward. It was incredible the way that my vision would work. I'm looking at this light, and when I said that, or when I recognized that it was God, that's when he said I could come in. And that still wasn't audible. That was in my interior. So it was as if I was understanding him, and I knew that he could understand my thoughts. So that was something that was completely obvious to me. And so I went right into the light.
It was actually the like a tangibleness to it. It's like a light that you could touch, like a light that you could feel. And then I can know that this light is actually what everything is made of, right? Everything is made of this light. I have no proof to it other than it was what I knew in that space and time. I knew that, this is what everything is made of, and everything, all of creation, it's what source is, or God. It's what we are. Nothing exists that is not made of love.
And then suddenly I just found myself somewhere else, and there was no pain, and there was no violence, and I wasn't cold. And I remember thinking, and it's just sort of this nebulous gray space. And I remember saying distinctly to myself, what the hell just happened to me? And at that moment, I feel the presence of this being. I got that this love, that type of love, it's here for every living soul. And that the experience then that I was experiencing of what we call God is this consciousness that we live within. It's not this old guy in a white beard somewhere in heaven who will judge us when we finally pass on. It's as though we are bobbing around in this sea of God consciousness. So we exist within that consciousness. And there's nothing but love that emanates from that. And I got the sense that love was, in fact, the thing that created everything. It's a power.
It's all encompassing. It's completely transformative instantly. As soon as you are graced with that energy, as soon as you are graced with that consciousness, that I could only ever explain it as the all, the highest wisdom of the universe and beyond that, it's profound. It's profound. We never experience that here. We don't even come even a tiny bit close to it by, it's not even a 2% level. We just don't come to that. We don't have that experience here. Yeah, it's hard to explain. It's so transformative. It's so complete and encompassing that it's right down to every part of your being, and it so incredibly well. Your soul is just completely and utterly amalgamated with it.
Everything got silent, and I started hearing this massive something being, which sounded like swishing water, flowing through this like tunnel of this darkness. And I knew it was God, but it was so powerful you couldn't even use the word God. It was everything all in one. And it was like shape-shifting and morphing and changing. So, but when it got into that open way, it was in the shape of a being, not a human body, but just a shape of being. And I immediately hit my knees.
Before we approached the threshold, there was individuation. I could see individual things. As we approached the threshold, everything became one thing, and that one thing was God. And I realized there is no place where there is not God. God is everywhere. He's animates all things. So I got that. And as we crossed the threshold, I saw a light. And it was beautiful. It was infinite in its scope. And it was blemishless. And that's the word that came to my mind, blemishless. It was perfect. And the light was alive. The light was love. And the next thing, Jesus took me directly into the light, directly. And the next thing I knew, I was sitting on God's lap. And this was God the Father. But the only way I can, and I have no words to describe this, but Jesus was there too. And I was sitting on God the Father, and he is a really big God. And I was like a toddler sitting on his lap. He had his arms around me. I had my arms around him. I tried to sneak a glance up to see his face, but I couldn't see his face. It was shrouded. And I was just kicking my feet like a little kid. And I have never felt so loved. I was loved. I was accepted. This was my Father. This was my Father. Meeting Jesus was like meeting my father, my brother, my best friend, all rolled into one. This was my Father. And I sat there on his lap with my face buried in his chest. I never wanted to leave. I wanted to stay there forever.
It was this comfort of the love that made me feel like I was totally protected and cared for beyond anything I've ever experienced before. And that was beautiful. It was, to have a guy who's so used to just, getting through everything, even if I have to, with aggression, to be able to feel that kind of peace and serenity. I love it. I absolutely loved it. And as I was walking through this light, that experience was growing, that love, and that it was like a river of love just flowing into my soul. And every step seemed to make it grow stronger. It was kind of like, when you drink from a cup and you have a straw and you're drinking through that straw and the fluid goes up into the straw and it's inside the straw the whole time you're drinking, but it's going into your throat and down your stomach. But it's new fluid always inside of that that straw. That's what this love was like. It was like a new experience of the same love, but in a more profound way each second that it was flowing into me. And I got the impression that that's what heaven's going to always be like, is God's love is going to constantly come into us. And since he's infinite, we will have an infinite supply of this freshness of his love. And it was so mind-blowing to have that experience. This atmosphere was also alive, and it had the same properties of love and joy and peace as the light did. And it was like a connector. It was like the lifeblood of this entire area that I was in. And in this area, there was a lot of beings. I mean, millions upon millions. I don't know what the number would be, but it was extremely voluminous of beings. And they were all like, had a torso of a human being, but they were light. They were just beautiful, radiant light. And they all had different levels of light. And, you know, some were brighter than others, but they were all reflecting that love of the light that was surrounding us. And that connection of the atmosphere to this other being that was in the center. And this being was absolutely as bright as the light that was surrounding us. And I immediately knew that this was Jesus.
And out of that light came Jesus. He walked out, and instantly I knew it was him. There was this instant spiritual recognition. This is my Lord, and he's here. And I'm like, oh, no. I can't look at him. He's just like, the awesomeness of his presence, the peace and the love that was radiating from him. It's indescribable. I'm supposed to be a writer, Heather. I cannot describe it. There are no words. I just dropped. I dropped to his feet. And I remember looking at his toes. I was like that close, and I was like, should I touch his big toe, or should I? And then I put my eyes and no, I'm not worthy to touch his toe. And I tell everyone, and I say it again, I can stay there right at his toe for all of eternity and be completely content. I don't need anything else but to be right there in his presence.
There was no pain anymore. Like, life is wonderful in so many ways. It's also quite painful. It can be very hard. And all of that was gone. It was just pure light, pure love, soft, ethereal, like light, and water, like perfect temperature water. Everything was a part of everything, was flowing between, around. It was the energy that connects all things with love and compassion. That's my understanding now of what God is. But I very much believe in God, very much believe in love and light and that connection between all of us.
The capacity for the divine to show up in any way, shape, or form that's going to help make that transitory process for the very brave soul that's just gone and done planet Earth. Because let's face it, guys, this place is nuts, and it's supposed to be that way. And that's what's really important to remember. After having had that experience, death is like walking over there, opening that door and walking out. It really is that easy.
It's like a roller coaster. You get on, it's scary. You're going around. It's like, oh, why did I decide to do this? And as you're rolling back in at the end of the ride, you're thinking, that was kind of fun. I'm going to do it again. So I think that might be sort of the way it goes on the other side. It's like, you get it when you're on the other side. You get it. And you realize in the greater scheme of things that you want more experience, because experience helps us grow compassion, which is, I think, a form of love, or a product of it. So, and love is what we're all here to learn and get more of.
But I always come back to the truest thing that has ever happened to me. And the truest thing that has ever happened to me is the near-death experience. So I weigh everything against that.
I wanted to go back. I wanted to go back to Earth so that I could just have a chance to build on that love. Because now it's like, now I know, now I know what to do and how to do it and how to make this last, forever. So I want to go back to love in the right way.
I think that's a good place to end this, because I've often said that listening to near-death experiences makes me want to be a better person. And hopefully you're getting a lot out of these as well. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, and also your thoughts on just the many things that we covered in this episode. So please leave those in the comments. If you prefer just to say made it, that's great too. I always really appreciate that. And if you can give it a like, I always appreciate that. And subscribe if you haven't. If you'd like to listen to other episodes, remember that you can always go to my playlist and find everything I've ever done, and you'll always find that link in the description. Thank you so much, everybody, for being here. I am so grateful for all of you, and I hope to see you in the next episode. Thanks for joining me on Beyond with Heather Tesch. Please add comments and questions you'd like future guests to answer. Also, if you liked what you heard, please hit the thumbs up button and subscribe. That'll help keep this podcast going. You can also go to Beyond with Heather Tesch to look for more episodes.